Welcome back to the channel, and today we're going to dive into yet another color grading tutorial video. So I just whipped up this color grade today and I thought I would share it with you. It was pretty fun to create. It's kind of more of a film inspired look with kind of a higher saturation feel to it. And obviously you can tweak it as you go. Don't do it necessarily just as I do it. My clip is probably going to be different than yours, so just adjust it accordingly to fit your needs. So without further ado, let's hop into the grade. And I already have my node tree set up here. So first things first, what we're going to do is we're going to actually just go up to our clips tab here. And then what I want to do is just right click on the clip that we're working with, and I'm going to add it to a group. So what you're going to do is add into a new group. I already created a group, so I have it in my group here. So just assign to group. And so what that's going to do is it's basically going to give you the opportunity, if you are grading multiple clips, which in most scenarios you probably are, whether it's for a longer form project or something shorter for social media, but it allows you to create kind of a universal look for all of these clips and then do your individual grades on the clip level. So let's hop on over to our pre-clip group. So to do that, you can just click on these dots here. So it's the furthest to the left, or you can do the drop down and do group pre-clip. So as you can see, I have my nodes set up here. So just 3 nodes. So conversion node, noise reduction node, if you want to use the noise reduction, and then halation and grain. So let's just start with our color space transform. So we're just gonna simple drag and drop color space transform in here. So again, if you've watched my previous videos, I'm using Sony. So I'm selecting Sony S-Gamut 3 Cine as my input color space, Sony S-Log 3 as my input gamma. And this is just the color space that I shot my footage on. So just adjust it according to whatever camera and format you shot yours on. Then my output color space, we're gonna be working in DaVinci wide gamut intermediate. So just make sure you have your settings set up to a color managed timeline. So let's select DaVinci wide gamut, and then our output gamma is DaVinci intermediate. And then what I'm going to do is I'm also going to go down to my tone mapping method, and I'm going to select luminance mapping, and we're going to use a custom max input of 10,000. So let's set that up, and then just to make things simple, I'm going to copy this node and then go up to my group post clip. And we are going to just paste it in here. Obviously, don't just leave it as is. You're going to have to change a number of things because now this is converting our timeline from DaVinci wide gamut intermediate into Rec 709. So let's change that over here. All right, and so then we're going to be selecting Rec 709 as our output color space, and then we want to use gamma 2.2 because that's typically the best gamma for viewing things on any sort of web browser device, that sort of thing. If it's not for like television, then just use gamma 2.2. All right, so let's hop on back to our clip level. And what we're going to do is we're going to start with our white balance node here. So instead of using the sliders or anything like that, I'm going to use the chromatic adaptation. I find that this is a far more accurate representation of a white balance adjustment. And especially if you know the white balance that you shot your clip on or clips. So we're going to go to our illuminant type and go to color temperature. And then for our target illuminant type, we're going to go to color temperature as well. So I shot this at 5600 Kelvin. And then I'm wanting to adjust this slightly, make it a little cooler. So I'm going to make it 5700 Kelvin for the target. Then what we're going to do is hop on over to our exposure node. And with this, we're going to be working with our HDR wheels. So this is a very photometric representation of exposure adjustment. That would be very similar to what you'd be doing in camera. So what I'm going to do first is I'm going to be working with my global knob. And I'm just going to be bringing that down. So we're going to bring it down quite a bit here. Not that much. Down to negative 0.85. Next, I'm going to work with my light wheel. And so we're going to bring this up to, let's see, to 0.18. And then we're just going to adjust our shadows, bring them down to negative 0.17. So before, after, just adjusting the exposure, bringing it down a little bit. The image was slightly overexposed to begin with. So we just want to kind of compensate for that. Next, what I want to do is I want to go to my contrast node. And so for this, what I'm going to do is we're going to adjust it a little different. If you've watched my previous videos, this is how I typically deal with contrast. But I'm going to go to the composite mode if I right click on the node, and I'm going to select luminosity. And so then what we're going to do is we're going to be playing around with the color wheels. So we're going to be adjusting the offset, the gain, gamma, and lift. So the gain's going to be focused on our highlights, gamma more the midtones, and then the lift is more the shadows. So just adjusting it to get a contrast ratio that we prefer. So let's start things off with our offset, and I just want to actually bring that down just ever so slightly, approximately that, about 24.88. And again, it's going to vary depending on your image. We're just trying to get an image here that looks nice to our eyes and also is falling nicely into our waveform, so we're not crushing our blacks, we're not overexposing our highlights. Yeah, we just want to keep it nicely exposed here. So then let's move on to our gain wheel. And so for the gain wheel, we want to pump this up a little bit. So we're going to bring this up to about 1.11. And then we're going to kind of compensate for that with our gamma wheel and a little bit of our lift. So with the gamma, what we want to do is we want to bring it down to about negative 0.05 for this image. And then I'm going to just adjust the lift ever so slightly, bringing it down to just negative 0. So let's see. As you can see, it's doing a decent amount to our image here from what we started with before any adjustments. So following this node, let's just go in a linear fashion here. Let's move on to our balance node. And again, with this, we're going to be working with our primary color wheels and just basically kind of developing a look for our footage using these wheels. So again, the lift's going to be adjusting more the shadows, the gamma is going to be more the midtones, and the gain's going to be focusing a little bit more on the highlights. So we just want to play around and get the desired look that we're wanting to achieve here. All right, so with the shadows, what we want to do is we want to make it a little bit more on the cyan side. And then we're going to balance that out with the gamma a little bit by introducing a little bit more warmth to our midtones. All right, so we're going to leave it at something like that. And then let's move on to our gain wheel. So for the gain, we want to just get rid of a little bit of the reds in the highlights. And then we want to add in a little bit of blue, just to cool it down a little bit. So yeah, let's leave it at that for right now. We're starting to develop a very distinct look. Obviously this isn't how it's going to end, but just bear with me and you will bear the fruits of my labor. That's a weird thing to say, but yeah. Anyways, let's continue. So next is the saturation node. So with this one, what we're going to do is we're going to right click on the node and we're going to go down to color space and we're going to select HSV. So that's the hue, saturation, and luminance values. And because it's a saturation node, we only want to work with the saturation. So we're going to disable channel 1 and 3 so that our adjustments don't impact the hue and luminance. We don't want our saturation adjustments to alter our hue, and we don't want our saturation adjustments to change the luminance values either. We just want them to focus specifically on saturation. So to do that, what we're going to do is go into our primary color wheels again, and we're going to be focusing on the gamma and gain knobs. And the gamma, it's going to be adjusting the saturation mostly in the midtones, and the gain is mostly in the highlights. So first things first, let's bump up the gamma here. Perfect. And then I'm gonna bring up the gain as well. We're going to add a decent amount of saturation here. So as you can see, before and after, it adds quite a bit of saturation. I don't want to go overboard. You can always play around with it, just add in a bunch, whatever suits your aesthetic. But for me, I'm just gonna keep it a little bit more low key, but I also still push it slightly. All right, so that's all for the saturation node there. Next, what I want to do is just do a slight highlight and shadow adjustment. And I'm just going to do a very simple method for this. We're just going to use the shadow and highlight sliders here in our primary color wheels. So let's just adjust those. So what I want to do is I want to bring the highlights down and then bring the shadows up ever so slightly. So let's bring the highlights down first, and let's just view it on their waveform here. So yeah, we're going to bring it down to about -10.5. And then our shadows, we're going to bring up about 4. I have it at 3.95, but around 4. And it's just a very subtle change. And you can adjust it more, less, not use it, use it. It's totally up to you. This is just a personal preference here. Then the next thing what I want to do is, you see these greens down here? I'm just finding them a little too green for my liking. So the next node is going to be a color adjustment node. And we're just going to keep it simple. Just going to use the curves here, the hue versus hue. And I just want to select my green value. And I'm going to go to my vector scope. And I just want to just warm it up a little bit. For me, it is just slightly too green. I'm just going to move these anchor points over and just make sure to zero them out again, or else you're going to be adjusting more of the curve than you want to. Just kind of warms them up, makes them less noticeable, kind of blends them into the rest. It's very subtle, but you want to keep it pretty subtle with these sort of adjustments. So I'm going to leave the skin adjustment for now. All right, so next we're going to work in our group post clip node structure. And we want to start with our first node here, and it's going to be introducing a split tone to our image. What that's going to do is add a little bit of depth and dimensionality by cooling off our shadows slightly and also adding a little warmth to our highlights. So to do that, we're going to work in our custom curves. Let's just expand this slightly here. And then what we want to do is unlink all of the curves. So let's start with our blue curve. I want to create an anchor point about there in our shadows. And then I'm just going to create another anchor point further down and bring up that value. So we want to create cyan here. So we're going to then go to the green one, create another anchor point where the blue anchor point is, and then bump that up just less than our blue anchor point. So let's take a peek here. So yeah, it's adding some coolness to our shadows. You can play around with it, do as much or as little as you want. But then let's focus on the highlights next. So let's start with our red curve. And with this, you want to be pretty gentle. It gets to be a bit much if you go too hard on your highlights. So let's just bring that down here. Yeah. And then I'm going to bring the green value up as well, just to create a little bit more of a yellow tone. And then let's bring the blue value down. Something like that. So that's before and after. And we're just going to want to refine it to best fit our needs. All right, so then what I want to do is I want to hop back to our clip node tree, and let's just go into this node here. So this is just working with the RGB mixer. And so just adjusting the color slightly. So these are the adjustments I made. I just wanted to show you that's completely optional. And then what we got to do is just slightly adjust. Our skin tones are looking actually pretty good. I might shift the hue slightly more to the red side of things because it's falling a little bit on the yellow side. let's just go over to our color slice here, and we're just going to work with our skin tone. So just adjust the hue a little bit. Let's take a peek at that, see what it's looking like. Yeah, that's pretty good. It's not bad. Play around with it as you see fit. Your image might look good without it. Might need a little bit more than what mine needs. But yeah, just see what works. And then final thing is we want to create some power windows. We want to further shape the image, basically just add a little bit of negative fill into our image through the use of these power windows. So the first one I did was just created a big ellipse and just softened it quite a bit. So it's just focusing kind of on these two corners here. And the reason for that is we have our sun coming from this direction, as you can see, and we don't want to fight how the sun is naturally lighting our image. So you want to just kind of complement what you're actually already seeing. Then what I want to do is I want to go over to our color wheels. I'm just going to bring down the gamma. Just bring down the gamma. So as you can see, it just puts a little bit more attention on our subject. Might be a little too much, but yeah. That's looking pretty good. Next, what I did was I added a gradient right here and just brought it down, stretched it up a bunch. And same thing, just bringing the focus back up to our subject's face rather than the ground or his stretch. So again, just popped on over to the color wheels and just brought the gain down. This one's subtler. I didn't want to go overboard with it. So let's just look at with them and without them, with them, without them. So just a subtle shaping of the image. You can choose to use them, don't use them. It's totally your preference. And then one of the final things that I want to do is I want to hop back over to the group pre-clip node tree, and I'm going to add in some halation and grain. So I'm just simply going to use our halation effect that's already in the studio version of DaVinci Resolve. Then what I'm going to do is the processing color space, just going to change that to DaVinci wide gamut. I'm going to bring up the film saturation levels to about 1.42, bring down the strength to about 0.326. I'm going to bring the gamma down to about 0.81. Saturation, I want to bump that up. I want to bring that up to 1.5, yeah, about 1.5 there. Let's also bring the spread up to, I think, 0.73-ish. Next, what I want to do is I want to just add in a basic grain element. I want to bring down the strength quite a bit here. So we're just going to keep it nice and subtle, about 0.1. And let's also bring the size down to about, I brought it down to about 0.194 here. And then the softness, going to keep it as is, and the saturation, keep it as is. So let's just take a peek at what that did to our clip here. So it just adds a little bit of softness, and as you can see, a little halation in the highlights there. Just kind of nice touch. Makes it look like a little bit more filmic and softer of an image. Then you can choose to add noise reduction or not, depending on what your image is looking like out of camera. But the way to do that is just go to our noise reduction tab and go to the temporal noise reduction. And I'm selecting 5 frames. Depends on how fast your computer is, but the higher the number, the better it's going to be. And then the estimation type, I want it to be better rather than faster. And then the motion range for mine, very little camera motion, so I selected small. And then you can just adjust the luma and chroma values here until it looks satisfactory to your liking. I wouldn't suggest going over about 30. If you have to go up to about 30, I would suggest adding a little bit of sharpening to your image.
All right, so there is one last piece to the puzzle, the secret sauce, you may say. And I forgot to mention, but this is in the post group clip. And I just applied my New Horizons LUT. just to add a little pop, a little pizzazz to the image. Obviously, this isn't for everyone. So if you are wanting to add this little touch of detail, feel free to go check out my LUT bundle in the description below. But like I said, it's completely optional. And as you can see, I used the key output gain here just to decrease the value quite significantly, just so that it's subtly affecting our image, shaping it, molding it to look a little bit more aesthetic and a little bit more well-rounded.
But yeah, that's all for the video today. So this is what the ungraded raw footage looks like. This is the Rec 709, and then this is the final grade. Thank you guys for sticking around to the end. Please feel free to drop a comment. If you have any questions, let me know. And hopefully you're able to apply this grade to some of your work. And I'll see you in the next video.